This is On My Nightstand, and I am Laura Cathcart Robbins. Thank you for listening today. If you've been listening to the podcast, you'll know that a couple weeks ago we had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Willie Parker, who is an OBGYN, a reproductive justice health advocate, an author, and many other things. And so five Fridays ago today, Roe V Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court. And among the kind of hullabaloo and chaos that ensued afterward, I was given the opportunity to catch up with Dr. Parker, which I really wanted to do. The only reason that Scott and I were allowed to interview him or able to interview him was because his slate, his schedule was cleared because Roe v. Wade was overturned. He is an abortion doctor in what I call the Deep South, Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, Alabama. So this is what happened. This is why we were able to catch up with him. It's a great interview. I hope you listen to it. But he's written a book called Life's Work. And I'm going to read to you from the opening of that book today. The chapter is called The Women. The Women. At 6:30 a.m. on procedure day, the abortion clinic waiting room at Reproductive Health Services in Montgomery, Alabama, is as hushed as a church. Inside, beyond the bulletproof doors, the women are waiting for me, occupying every vinyl-covered chair, occasionally perched on windowsills. 25, 30, as many as 50 women sometimes. When I pass through the room in my street clothes, the uniform of sweats, baseball cap, and prescription shades that allows me to hide in plain sight, most of them won't even look up. But occasionally a woman who will have heard of me, the quote-unquote nice black doctor at this clinic, she'll meet my eyes and smile. She may believe I'm going to get her through this, whatever this means to her, and hope that by making contact with a glance, she will show me that she is an individual with a story and reasons and dreams of her own. I am here in this crowded abortion clinic in Alabama or Mississippi or Georgia, where I also work to provide abortions for women because they say they need them. I am a Christian raised in the churches right here in the South, in Birmingham, an hour-plus drive from Montgomery. In the black churches of my childhood, an unplanned pregnancy was reason enough for a public shaming or even expulsion from the church ministry. A girl who became accidentally pregnant might be forced to stand up before the congregation on a Sunday morning and beg forgiveness for her sins, while the equally sexually curious boy who helped her get pregnant sat with his brothers and sisters in Christ in judgment of her. Unbeknownst to me, the women of the church of my youth must have sometimes had abortions. Of course they did, legally or illegally, but no one ever spoke of them. This was the Christianity I grew up in, and it has taken me decades of emotional, spiritual, and intellectual wrestling with my conscience and with the world to get to a place where I am now. I remain a follower of Jesus, and I believe that as an abortion provider, I am doing God's work. I am protecting women's rights, their human rights to decide their futures for themselves, and to live their lives as they see fit. Today, as I write this, access to safe and compassionate abortion care is under unprecedented threat, most often from people who call themselves Christians. What I do is unfathomable to my faithful opponents, yet preserving that access is my calling. As a Christian and as a doctor, I am committed to protecting women's health. This moral understanding came to me slowly, but it started to coalesce more than a dozen years ago when I had my come to Jesus moment around the subject of abortion. From childhood, I had long inferred that abortions were wrong, and for the first half of my career as an OBGYN, I refused to perform them. But as I matured in both my faith and my profession, I found I was increasingly at odds with myself, an inner conflict that sat uncomfortably with me. I never questioned women's individual choices, but until I found clarity and certainty around the abortion issue, what I call the head-to-heart connection, I rescued myself as a practitioner from the fight. Since achieving that clarity of mind and fullness of heart that liberated my understanding around this work, my passion for it has doubled. I have been working as an abortion provider for more than a dozen years with increasing energy and focus. I'm pulling out of the book just for a second. This is me, Laura, talking now to tell you that this book was published, I think, in 2016 or 2017. So this was written at that time, so you'll hear some maybe dated references in it. I moved to my hometown of Birmingham to take care of women living in communities like the one in which I was raised. Some of my patients, poor and black, might easily be one of my 3 sisters or a cousin or an aunt. Others might be anyone, you, your niece, your daughter, your mother, or your best friend. Many are women with some means, in the middle and upwardly mobile classes. Some of my patients have formulated strong political opinions about abortion, but more have not, and merely walk through my doors because they're doing what they deem necessary for themselves. I do this work in the context of a ramped-up national crusade against it, one that promises, with a Republican president and Congress, to intensify. Calls from antis to overturn Roe, to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and to defund Planned Parenthood are growing ever louder. Each one of these backward moves will not only restrict women's access to safe, affordable abortion care, but will diminish women's access to good health care in general, and are putting their lives and the lives of their children at risk. And poor women and women of color will bear the brunt of this political posturing by the ideologues, as they always do. Already I have consciously put myself on the front lines. Since 2010, when right-wing extremists swept the nation's state houses and legislatures, more than 300 state laws have been passed aimed at restricting access to abortion, despite the fact that it's legal. In 27 states, women are now forced to wait 1, 2, even 3 days between receiving mandatory counseling, which often includes bogus information, and obtaining an abortion, a barrier that puts undue burden on working women, women with children, and women who live in rural areas, requiring them to take time off work and spend additional money to travel back and forth to a clinic that may be 200 miles from home. 14 states since 2010 have banned procedures after 23 weeks in violation of Roe. 37 states have circumscribed medication abortion, placing limits on patients' access to the FDA-approved pills that ends pregnancy in its early phases. And more than 24 states have taken aim at the daily operations of clinics themselves, placing irrational hurdles in their way with the motive of shutting them down. These laws had the desired effect. Since 2011, more than 160 abortion clinics have closed. These laws have been passed so invisibly, so incrementally, that few have even noticed them. But they are affecting the real futures of real women by forcing them into lives that they did not choose. I think of the 21-year-old woman I saw in the only open clinic in Mississippi in 2013. Born and raised in the Delta, she was home for the summer, having graduated from a Division I university, where she studied on an athletic scholarship. And on her way to law school, finding herself 7 weeks pregnant, she sought my care, and I did her abortion without complication. Talking with her, I saw how clearly she saw her life. She was on the precipice, about to write a new story for herself. She would not be another dirt-poor single mother. She would live in a world of limitless possibility, which she would create with her law degree. I sensed in her no flinching, no hesitancy, no reservation about her abortion decision. All her life, this woman had been making decisions with her future in mind. And when I saw how consequential this one was to her, my resolve to do this work increased. When I became an abortion provider in 2002, there were 12 abortion clinics in my home state of Alabama. Now there are 5. Next door in Mississippi, there is only one. To do an abortion where there is the greatest need is to be itinerant, always on the road, because the distances between clinics is so great. In the car, I listen to all kinds of music, Miles and Coltrane, Kenny G and Prince, Public Enemy and the notorious B.I.G. I am a devotee to books on tape. My time on the road has become quote-unquote me time. I am always encumbered with laundry and luggage, the chores mandated by a nomad's existence. Like every busy person, I keep a fantasy future in mind. I have purchased cooking pots and a double bass for the leisure I imagine but do not possess. Instead, I fill the gaps in my schedule with another vocation, speaking engagements and board meetings, traveling the country like a 21st century St. Paul, preaching the truth about reproductive rights, because I have come to see that I'm the one, as the old saying goes, that I've been waiting for. As I drive long miles, I become contemplative, and I reflect on my heroes. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Tubman, exemplars who carry the lives and aspirations of a whole people on their backs. My 5 brothers and sisters tell me they worry for my life, and I hear their concern. I understand that my commitment to this work puts me at risk. 11 people, including 4 doctors, have, since the passage of Roe V Wade in 1973, been assassinated for this work, killed in cold blood for the so-called sin of providing safe and legal health care for women. Rationally, I know this, but I reiterate to my siblings, to my concerned friends, my vow. I refuse to give in to fear. The truth is, I am more afraid of living a life of cowardice, of allowing any anxiety over prospective harm to keep me from my convictions. I can live with the awareness that someone might harm me. I am not so sure that I am brave enough to live with the awareness that I was too afraid to do what I knew to be right.